Well, hi, Comadres. My name is Eileen Schleff, and along with Maria Ferrer. We are the coordinators of Las Comadres speaker series. This year, we've been gathering Latinas who are breaking the mold in every area. The interviews are recorded, and then they're added to Las Comadres YouTube channel. We've had an incredible group of comadres. Tonight, we welcome Elvira Gonzalez, author, activist, athlete, and former professional track and field coach. She's quite amazing. Elvira grew up in Laredo, Texas, a city that prominently is featured in her upcoming young adult nonfiction book, Hurdles in the Dark. She's also founder of the Writers Inkubator. That's a literary online learning platform helping various writers find representation and land book deals. Her company has partnered with InsideOUT Writers, a nonprofit organization that conducts writing classes inside juvenile halls and prisons. Interviewing Elvira is Maria Ferrer. She's been a comadre for over 15 years, is again my co-chair of the Speakers Bureau, and she's the current director of Las Comadres para las Americas. Comadre, Maria, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Eileen. Welcome, Elvira. We're so excited to speak to you tonight. Please tell us about your upcoming memoir, Hurdles in the Dark. We understand that you started writing it when you were a teenager in detention hall. And, so how long has it taken for it to take shape? And tell us about how a Comadres Writers Conference helped you.
Great question. So my book is a coming of age young adult memoir, as you said. And it's in the perspective of a young adult, and I started writing it when I was 16, and I was in juvenile hall, and everyone always asked me, how did this story start, or how did this book evolve? But when I was in 8th grade, I heard a story of Gerda Weissman. I'm not sure you guys are familiar with her, but she's an incredible person. She's a Holocaust survivor, and she happened to be in my school my 8th grade year. And she talked about, that she wrote a book about, surviving. And I thought that was just amazing that she was able to survive so many, horrible things. And here she was in Laredo, Texas, and in one of the least diverse cities, talking about how she's alive and her will to survive has gotten her this far. So I remember that story. So when I was in juvenile, my sophomore year in high school, I thought, I have to tell the story of how, these young girls who've all, come out of lower income communities, and there's not that many resources for us. Unfortunately, I think now it's changed in that juvenile hall, and they've built a new one, but at the time there wasn't that many resources. So I thought, I have to tell the story, and hopefully someone's able to shed light on the situation to help us, champion us to become successful adults. So I thought the way it was operating at that time, it was not so good for young kids. So, but now things have changed. So that's kind of how the story started. And I had never read a book outside of school. But in school, we did read books. But I thought, I'm going to write a book. I don't know what I'm doing, but I know that this is what I want to do. And I want to share these young girl stories. But the book has evolved from not only telling that story, but how I was able to get a scholarship and, have so many opportunities. So like I said, the perspective is from the young adult perspective, not so much of my adult self now. As far as the Las Comadres conference in 2017, that was amazing. At the time, I was like 25, and there was a lot of resources there and guidance. I thought, oh my goodness, where have you guys been? I've been trying to get this book published for a long time, and I think it's the right time now, because they usually say to write a memoir, take about a couple of years to kind of be able to reflect and sit with it. But also I was 16 at the time, and I think it's good that I've waited this long, but also becoming a better writer. I've seen the differences that, waiting this long, but also finding the resources with you guys. And I did speak to a couple of literary agents through you guys, and they taught me a lot. So here I am a couple of years later. Thank you.
Wonderful, exciting. Now tell us about the title, Hurdles in the Dark.
Yeah, Hurdles in the Dark. Yes, this title is a metaphor. And but it also is a scene in my book, and I don't want to spoil the scene, but okay. But yeah, so it's a metaphor, and how that title kind of became. I thought, in life we experience real life hurdles, and everyone always mentions like just overcome the hurdles. But in my life, it was like really overcome the real life hurdles on the track, but also outside the track. So I thought, hurdles in the dark is a great metaphor for a lot of things, not only my journey, but so many other people's journey. And being afraid to face like real life hurdles, I think that's like a natural human emotion to, face something that is, an unknown situation, and you're kind of like, can I do this or can I not do this? I'm like, you just got to go through it. And whether you fall on your face over a real hurdle, or you don't come up, you don't come to the top, or wherever you want to end up, I think it's like the learning and how much you've grown as a person, that for me, that is success. So that's kind of where the title came. And also I had like 3 other titles, and one great way to like engage with your family and friends and bring them, along with your journey, is that I put it on my Facebook, like, hey, I have these 3 titles, like 3 or 4, vote for them. And they voted for Hurdles in the Dark years ago. And it's still the title of the book. So that's kind of how the title came to be.
Oh, that's so good. You engage the family and your friends. Very
Yeah,
good.
so they're part of this. I'll have a little thank you note there in the
Yes, yes.
acknowledgements for that.
Now make sure they buy a book. Don't give it to them. Buy the book.
Buy the book, yes,
Yes,
please.
yes, make sure. Now you said that you did that it's a young adult fiction, so it's a memoir, but you wrote it for the young adult market. Were you why did you do that? Is it because the YA market is better, or is it that you are talking to your younger self?
That's a great question. And I think as far as marketing goes, a lot of writers that I meet are like not sure to write to the young adult or the adult genre. And for so long, my book was written for adults. And the more I work with young kids, I was a track and field coach, and I coached, middle school, high school, at college level, the more I realized, oh my goodness, they are dealing with similar issues that I grew up with and that I talk about. Why isn't this book geared towards them? And so that's kind of the decision that I made. This book is for young adults. And of course, there might be a hybrid of adults reading the book. But I think ultimately, because the story is told from the perspective of my younger self, I want it to be for young adults. And young adults deal with a lot of issues, and they're still dealing with today with bullying and some of their societal issues that I talk about in my book. And so I thought it'd be great to tell the story for young adults. Yeah, so that's kind of how that came to be. But like I said, I do hope there's an adult market that picks up the book, because I do deal with a lot of adult situations. I think that's one thing people were concerned about, but young adults face a lot of, similar situations that adults face, and they have similar emotions, right? It might be different circumstances, but they still feel pain, still feel love and
Yes.
heartbreak. So,
and young adults, can be 19, 20, even 24.
Even 30. I love reading young adult, actually. And it's been fun doing research and reading more of the young adults. And there's great content out there now these days for young adults. And, the young adult market is exploding over COVID. It exploded. And a lot of them are reading adult memoir, like The Glass Castle and books like these. So I thought it'd be a great opportunity to tap into that market and, like I said, talk to the young readers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now you've come a long way since that juvenile detention hall, and your book has sold for 6 figures. We won't ask how many, but that's a lot of zeros. And so, do you feel like vindicated? Do you feel exuberant? How do you feel that, this is your story and you got a good amount for it, and they're going to, if they invest this much, they're definitely going to do more publicity and, get it out there. So how do you feel about that? 6 figures, lots of zeros.
I mean, that's exciting. It's very exciting. I don't think people realize how this book industry works, but it's tough being a writer and going after that 6 figures. But since I started off this venture, I use YouTube as my best friend and Google. I thought, I want to sell this book and I want to sell it for 6 figures. Like, what do I have to do to sell this 6 figures, right? And if you Google online, they'll tell you all this bunch of things. You can have all these followers, and I'm like, I don't have a lot of followers, so there must be another way to go about this. And so yeah, I'm really excited. I'm happy that being part of Las Comadres conference, that helped me really think about the proposal that, that I used to sell this book, I didn't submit my manuscript. I submitted a book proposal, which is a business plan for the book. And, as far as selling the book goes, the 6 figures was amazing. And it was kind of more of like, how much money do you want to get it off the market? And it happened really fast within 24 hours of submitting my book proposal. And that book proposal took about 7 years to write, but I didn't have the tools and the knowledge, so it took a long time to learn. So I'm really excited and happy. And of course, as far as the advance goes, it's a percentage of what the publishers think they're going to sell. And hopefully they're able to, they have the distribution channels. So I'm hoping that they're going to sell a lot of books and they're able to reach the market that I want to reach. So I'm very happy about the 6 figures, but it's interesting talking about the 6 figures because I don't think there should be a value to like a personal story, but it just shows the amount of marketing potentially that there's going to go behind the book. So I'm really excited about that.
Very good. So while we're talking about your writing, Eileen put in a question about, we know that you heard, Greta speaking, and then you thought that you can write your book. So Eileen wants to know, how did you make that happen? Were there other, family, friends who encouraged you? Were there writers who encouraged you, teachers who encouraged you and stuff? When did you, because a lot of people say, oh, I'm going to write a book, but there comes a moment where you sit down, you say, I'm a writer. And then, so what was your process there?
Yeah, that's a great question. Eileen, I would say that as far as coming up with that, well, one, like I said, I didn't read growing up. I didn't come from a family of readers. And, my family grew up in a lower income area. And so, it wasn't easy for them to access this information and books. And that's something that I want to work on as far as how do we get young readers, specifically Latino communities, to read more. I think it could be a reason of so many things, like maybe there's not enough representation of young Latinos. But for me, when I remember Gerda, I thought, I think having a book and being able to share with a lot of people around the world would be the best to talk about these societal issues growing up in a border town. So yeah, I think that was the moment where I was like, I don't know anything about writing books, but I know if I love diary, I love journaling. So if I just tell the story of as it happens, maybe I could, that could be a book. I had no idea what I was doing, of course, right? And that has helped me, polish my manuscript. I had those journals and those drafts from a long time ago, and there wasn't really a lot of, I didn't really tell a lot of people I was going to write a book. And it was the girls in juvenile. I did tell them I was writing a book. They're like, no, you're not going to write a book. How are you going to do that? And no one really knew what I was talking about, I think. But in my mind, I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm going to figure out a way to get this out there. And, my grades weren't so great in English class. I spoke Spanglish growing up. And if you guys ever been to Laredo, Texas, there's a lot of Spanglish. So I didn't feel that I was strong in English or in Spanish. So for me, it was very difficult writing the book and making it in a publishing book. You can't write it as a journal or anything like that. It has to be professional, and there's so much to the book. It's like, I call it a formula to writing a book. So that took a lot of years. And what's really helped me was the support of my family and my friends. And everyone still talks about like, Elvira, where's the book? You've been talking for 15 years. So it's like, it's finally coming. So I hope I answered your question.
Yes, that was very good. Before we moved into sports, is the book going to be also published in Spanish? Is there any talk about publishing it in Spanish, maybe not next year, but the year after?
Yes, definitely in Spanish. I think that's going to be a big market. And there's a lot of the dialogue is in Spanish. So that's good. But as far as just Spanish strictly, yeah, it would be, I'm assuming it's going to be in different languages, and that would be one of the top ones because of the, I have a lot of the Latino culture intertwined in the story. Yes.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. So let's turn to sports. Now, we all know that sports is a ticket, out of the hood and stuff, but this is expected of boys. We don't really think of sports as getting girls out of the hood. So how did you use sports to get out from under and to, to launch yourself over that hurdle?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a lot in the book. This, you know, hopefully you guys are able to read the book, but yeah, this I talk about often because growing up in the barrios of Laredo, there is a lot of, you know, things that have trickled down to the young generation, and my friends, they were all boys. There was not that many girls because a lot of girls couldn't be outside playing, you know, like you're talking about this. And all the boys were like, no, girls can't run fast. Girls, you know, can't play with boys. And that kind of fueled me. I'm like, I'm going to prove you guys wrong. And I want to be as athletic as you guys. And I had my mom who was super athletic and active with her friends. Her girlfriends were older and they played basketball. So I always thought, you know, if those girls can do it, I can do it too. And that kind of harnessed my competitiveness growing up with mostly boys. And at the time when I was young, for me, it was more like, I'll prove them wrong. And that kind of trickled down to, me being a hurdler in high school and using all those, competitive edge to help me get that scholarship that I later did get in high school. But yeah, I think there is a lot of, talks that, girls are not as competitive, but, girls are as equally as competitive, but not just that. I think sports can teach kids so many things like, sportsmanship, leadership, self-esteem is a big thing that I see when I was coaching. These types of things can help kids into adulthood as far as like career. So I think sports should be available for everyone. And there's no barriers to entry. But, as far as using sports to get out of the barrio, I think for me, growing up in the barrio was all about survival, like running from stray dogs, running from stray cars, like lurking around. And it was always running away from something. And I think that's probably why it was, fast. And the way I view running and the starting of the gun made me think about the barrio and all the stuff that happens in these lower income communities that I grew up in. So yeah. I think girls are equally as competitive. And one story that comes to mind, a few years ago, went to Universal Studios, which I love, in Orlando, and there's a Fear Factor Live thing that happens, and you could participate in it. And I have my two little brothers, one is 10 and one is 15, and I told my brothers, I'm going to win this thing. And I'm sure it's going to be all boys. And they had never seen me compete because I left when they were born. So I left Laredo when they were born. And they were like, you're not going to win. Girls can't win. So I was like, I have to win this in front of them somehow, because it was all boys that made it to, you have to sign a waiver, and then they pick and choose, and they picked 4 guys and they picked me. And I remember in the back, before we entered like the stage, the boys were just talking to each other and I was by myself, and they're like 20-year-olds and I was like 27. I was like, I haven't been working out, so I have to figure out how I'm gonna win this. And I won the whole thing, and it was all physical challenges. And I was so happy. I remember thinking about my brothers, and I remember thinking about what I said earlier when we started this competition. They interview you, and I said, girls are going to win because 1, I'm the only girl here, and 2, girls rock. So you had the little girls cheering for me, but I was like, I have to win now. I don't know how I'm going to do it because they look pretty strong, but yeah, you don't judge a book by its cover. But yeah, it was really fun. I got a free shirt, and my brothers are, wondering how that happened, like their sister, because they've never seen that competitive side of me. But yeah, I think it's that's a great question, and I hope more girls are open to playing sports. But if, one thing about, as far as the education by Ticket to Freedom, like one thing I would like to say is that I wish school was free, right? So potentially some kids don't want to be playing sports and work, training 3-4 times a day. Sometimes I train hours, and I didn't have the experience that most high school kids had of like having fun and doing all this stuff. For me, it was like practice, because I got to get the scholarship so I can become the first one in my family to get an education and leave the barrios and have these opportunities. And as much as I love sports and I love hurdling, I think that it was very difficult training that much at that level at such a young age. And when I think school should be free. So yeah, I think there's so many things about sports that could help young girls and young boys, but also I would hope that school is free, because at the collegiate level, it really becomes more like a job, right? And you don't have that experience as well as like the college life, but also to be able to focus on school and your education. It's very difficult to do both at the collegiate level. But yeah, track gave me a lot of opportunities, and because of that, I'm here today, and I moved to New York and all these things. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity getting an education.
You just had to wait for the fun for later. When you were
That's
a little bit
exactly what
older and can enjoy it more.
That's exactly what I say. Sometimes I just take a day off and I'm like, don't feel bad. It was a lot of hard work, and I'm happy that I'm here and I have so many opportunities. So that's for sure. That's one thing that the sports and scholarship has given me. So I'm very grateful for that.
So were you an Olympic hopeful in track and field?
I didn't have that in my mind. For me, it was like, get the education, get a scholarship. School could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. I think the private school was really expensive that I went to. So it wasn't really until I was in college and I thought, my times are pretty good if I only had, if I could reach this level. And it's very difficult to be a Olympian in the US specifically. You can be 20th in the US and be ranked probably 20th in the world. But yeah, no, for me, it was more of the education. And then my freshman year, I did go to nationals in the relays at the NCAA. We finished 10th in the US. And then the following year, I broke my back. Like, I broke my L3, L4, L5. So it was over. I was like, it's done. I'm not going to be able to compete at that level again. So that kind of transitioned into my coaching.
So tell us about your coaching. So it happened because of an accident, but how does one study to be a coach? Is there like a training program, or does it evolve, or how does one become a coach?
Yes. As far as how I, tumbled into coaching, it was because of the injury. I was thinking that track is my life. What am I going to do next? And coaching just seemed natural to me because I love the sport of track and field, and I love sports in general. I did a lot of sports, but track is my favorite. And you don't have to be a great athlete to be a coach. I think to be a good coach, it really is about like relating to the athletes, and not only that, but being a student of the sport. There's a lot of older people in the sport who coach, a lot of men, predominantly men, I have to say that. And that's great, but I think a lot of people are set in their ways, and like, we did this 20 years ago like this, and now with science and physics, we're able to learn more, that you don't have to be an amazing athlete to excel. You can just position your body in specific ways and you could actually jump really far or run really fast. So as far as being a professional coach, I think the best thing to do is, research. YouTube videos are great. I always go back to talking about YouTube videos because I used it a lot to coach myself in track when I was in high school, when YouTube was fairly new. So yeah, being a student of the sport, learning about physics. If you love physics, definitely coaching could be a great thing for you. I didn't like physics, but when I applied it to track and field, it all makes sense. So that 70 in high school grade, my grade should have been 100. It talked about track and field, but yeah, so yeah, you don't have to be an amazing athlete. You could just be someone who loves sport and is generally interested in helping athletes, reach their goals. I think that's the most important thing.
Mm-hmm. Are you still doing any coaching? I know that you had you coach people privately. You had a 2-time Olympic hurdler that you had helped, and another person in Greece. Are you still coaching anyone?
No. So I coached for about 9 years, so a very long time. For my 20s, I coached mostly. But I ran my own program in New York City, actually in the Upper West Side. And I wanted to bring kids from all different socioeconomic backgrounds and get them together and help them. So it was a nonprofit. And then I coached at UPenn at the University of Pennsylvania, and then in London, where I helped a 2-time Olympic hurdler. And then I went back to New York City. New York City always has me coming back. And then I coached at the indoor track and field called the Armory, which is like the mecca of indoor track and field. We have hundreds of meets every year. So my job was to help kids. We have a lot of kids that come and train there, work on the horizontal and vertical jumps. So like long jump, triple jump, and stuff like that. But I had so many athletes that are now running in college, some former athletes that are at the NCAA level, so competing. So no, I'm not coaching anyone anymore. I've transitioned to my other career. But at some point, I think I would love to go back and keep coaching when I have a little bit more free time. Yeah.
Very good. Yes. So now let's move on to the Writers Inkubator program. Mm-hmm. Tell us about what that is and how, who can use it and how can you use it?
Yes. So Writers Inkubator runs accelerator programs specifically for first-time writers who, have a story, or they want to publish a book, either traditional, self-publishing. Any levels of any writer is welcome. So basically, let's say if you have a story, you feel like, I have a story that might have a market. I want to join your program, and I want to see, if I could land a literary agent, but also a book deal. So we help writers prepare a book proposal, which is what you need to sell your book in most cases, right? It's a business plan. If you want to start a business, you have to write a business plan. So it's a business plan for a book. So that's what we do. We use the proposal that I use to sell my book for 6 figures, and we go down the line and working through each section. And I think as writers, we're more of the creatives. We don't want to deal with the business stuff. And I think that's kind of what the barrier it is to get to the traditional publishing, is that we don't really know a lot about the marketing and the business side of publishing. So we help writers think about, the market, most importantly, who's your target audience and how big is that target audience? Because the bigger that number, the more like cha-ching, oh yeah, a lot of people can buy this book. So all story aside, ultimately it's a business for the publishers. So we want to help our writers determine how big their market is, and market their story. But also the book proposal is it's a blueprint for their book and their manuscript. So a lot of people are like, well, what if I don't get it published? I'm like, you can still go the self-publishing route. This will help you determine where your audience is and where you can find them. I think that is very important to have a successful book. And we've had people already get book deals. Just recently, we had someone named Rajik Sewell, who's an amazing person. He's a double above amputee who was the first person to finish the World Championship Triathlon competition in Kona, Hawaii. And I met him in a pool, and I'm like, this man is beating me in a swim. And I look down, I'm like, wow, he doesn't have, he's a double above amputee. And he told me a story. I'm like, please join my writing workshop. And he just landed a book with Hachette. And his book, I think, is slated for 2025 publication. So we're really excited to help other people, especially, underrepresented stories. I think that's important. And we see the transition now with publishers, and there's definitely a lot more books coming out that are from, underrepresented voices and a lot of societal issues. So I'm really excited. But yeah, so the accelerator is one part. And then now we're transitioning to a full like ed tech platform where it's all self-paced, because right now it's, we only have a couple of people working and we have so many students. So we want to make it available to a lot of people at their own, disposal and at their own pace. So we're really excited for that. So it'll be like downloadable templates of how to query agents, the 6-figure proposal. That's like our main thing. But also how to land agents. So we have other services. We also do book to film. We've, optioned some rights for some of the stories we've worked on. So we kind of do a lot of things. A lot of producers are looking for stories, and a lot of them are looking for nonfiction stories. So it kind of all comes together. So that's kind of what we're doing.
Yes, because I think a lot of, people can say, yes, it's easy to write a book. You just sit down and write a book. But writing a book is one thing. Publishing is totally something else, and publishing is a business. Yes, you love that story and that's the story of your heart and you want to share that with your family, your friends, but you want somebody to buy it,
Yes,
and
yes.
you need to and today the publishing world they don't really, unless you're like Nora Roberts and, Stephen King, they don't promote you. So you got to nowadays, you got to be your own business person.
Yes.
And you have to tell them, like, these are the markets that I want to be in. This is where I want you to do my stuff. So sometimes, you have to drive the train.
It's true. Yes. And then a lot of people are wondering like, well, maybe self-publishing is a better route if they're not going to give me a lot of marketing tools. So yeah, the publishing world is tough. And I think that's something that I kept in the back of my mind for so many years. But that's why I took so much time to work on that book proposal. I'm like, how can I get the 6-figure book deal? I need that. I want that. I'm going to do whatever it takes. So it did take a little bit of time working on the proposal, but I think from all the research and all the people that I've talked to in my literary world, I've had great mentors that have helped me a lot. And so that's kind of what we're sharing at Writers Inkubator. We want people to know all these tools and information. I don't want to hide anything. Like for me, I wish someone would have offered me these tools, it would have expedited things really, really fast. But that's part of the journey. So I want to give back and be able to give those tools and the book proposal. You can Google this online and Google book proposals, and most tell you 3 different routes. 1, you gotta have a lot of followers. 2, you gotta be an amazing writer. And like I said, I didn't consider myself an amazing writer. I could barely speak proper English growing up. So for me, that was really hard to practice, but practice makes perfect. And then the third thing that people say is like, you have to have, you have to be celebrity or have a lot of endorsements, and I'm not a celebrity. So I think there's hope for those people who don't have any of these things. And I think it comes down to marketing and identifying how big is this market. Yeah.
Mhm. Now, we know that you're also using your platform to help kids in detention and having their stories heard, how are you doing that?
Yes, so Writers Inkubator has partnered up with InsideOUT Writers, as you mentioned earlier, and they've been running for so many years, and I wish I would have heard about them because they're doing incredible work in the juvenile halls and also prisons. So they help people write their story, and they, I think they've had people publish books also from prison. I'm not sure about that, but I mean, like I said, when I was in juvenile, I was like, I wish there was more resources and there were more activities of channeling, your anger or your story. We didn't have any of that. But InsideOUT Writers has been doing that for so long. And Jimmy Woo, who's the executive director, was also part of this program. And he left, he got out of prison, and now he's the executive director. But Jimmy is a great friend of mine. And what we're doing is, as soon as some of these folks leave prison and juvenile halls, they've come to our accelerator, and we help them package their story and get them, an agent, and hopefully get their books published. But we're soon hoping to transcribe a lot of our material and give it back to Jimmy Woo, who could share it with his people inside the prisons and juvenile halls. But long-term vision, I think we will hopefully be able to run courses in these places ourselves. It's very hard. There's a lot of regulations doing that, but Jimmy is already in there. So we're hoping to, make that connection, and hoping that once, if some of these people, when they leave, they still want to, write their book and get it published, I think it's great for them to come to us because we have those resources already. But yeah, and yeah, some of the stories are incredible, and I think it's important to be able to tell those stories for sure.
Are you doing anything in the Laredo juvenile detention?
I was just down there recently, and I contacted a friend of mine who did an interview there, and he's like, maybe we can run something here. So I'm hoping that, once my book is out, it'll be easier for us to get in there because, they don't know a lot about my book and what I'm trying to do. But hopefully, yes, that would be great. And that's something I thought about when I was doing, like, someday maybe we'll have writing classes here, just a different thing, not just like writing classes, but I think, telling your story, especially young kids, they need to filter, they need to have an outlet to talk about what experiences they're going through. I think writing is, for me, like therapy, and writing a nonfiction. I always tell people, you run a memoir, it's going to be, up and down emotions, but at the end, you're going to learn a lot about yourself, about a lot of people. You might have a different perspective of, your parents, your parents doing the best they can with the resources that they have. So I think, writing is amazing. And I'm hoping that we're able to go into the Laredo Juvenile Hall where it all started. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, your book hasn't come out yet. It's coming out. Tell us about when it's coming out.
So the book was slated for fall this year, but it's been pushed to early spring. I don't know exactly the date. I'm hoping to wait to hear from my publisher soon. But yeah, so sometime in spring, I think 2023. Yes.
Okay. Now, are you working on something new?
No, I'm just working on the Writers Inkubator, but I think I'll have a couple books. I already have so many in mind that I want to work on, but not anytime soon. I think this will be my first book, and I'm hoping to, write more YA, potentially adult, historical fiction. Laredo has incredible history growing up there. Laredo used to be its own country back in the mid 1800s, and I think there's fascinating history that kind of you can see it's trickled down to now to what's happening in the border and everything. So yeah, maybe in the near future I'll write another book. We'll see how
Yeah.
this one goes.
It's gonna go well, don't worry. So my last question is, share with us one life lesson that you've learned that really has stuck with you and speaks to you. And, like maybe there's a mantra that you say whenever sometimes there's little doubts that creep in and whatever, but you look yourself in the mirror and you say, what do you say?
It's back to the hurdles in the dark. I think at my core, I'm a hurdler by nature, growing up in the barrio and all the things we have to overcome growing in these lower income communities. So for me, if I see something that scares the hell out of me, which is a lot of times, I'm like, this thing is so high, but then I remind myself, I've overcome other things before. This is just a little thing and I have to overcome it. I got to leap over that hurdle because I don't know what's on the other side if I don't try. So yeah, for me, it's just thinking back on, my childhood and the hurdles that I had to overcome. And people always say that, right? It's like cliche maybe at this point, like just overcome the hurdles. It's just another hurdle, but it really is just another hurdle, and people will say, how do you measure success? And for me, success is measured by the hurdles you've overcome. So that's what kind of drives me forward. And yeah, I'm human too, and I'm scared at some points, and I still look at a hurdle in real life, an actual hurdle, the obstacle, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how the hell did I jump over that? Because that's really tall. But then I remember how things were back then, and I was like, I got to do this. And one scene that comes to mind that kind of taught me this, when I first started out hurdling my freshman year, I fell down over a hurdle during the race, and this happens a lot to everyone. And my coach would always say, "You're a true hurdler. You're not a true hurdler until you fall." And then I fell. And so
So you're a hurler.
So now I'm a hurdler. That wasn't intentional. But yeah, so I fell and my teammates were like, "Get up, there's people coming, the girls are coming." So I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta get up. And I don't know if I want to do this anymore. It's embarrassing. It's, embarrassing being a young girl and like, there's so many people looking at you and everyone remembers after like you fell. So when I finished the race, I was like, do I really want to do this? That hurt. But I'm happy that I kept propelling forward and I didn't give up even when I wasn't the best hurdler, especially in the 100-meter hurdles. I would come in second to last place for like weeks. But slowly, I started becoming better and better. So you just never know. You might not be the best out there, like just looking like no one would think a 5'1" girl from Laredo, Texas would be a great hurdler because these girls are 5'10", although now one of the best hurdlers is my height. So no one would think, let's put her on the hurdles. Every time people would see me on the track, they're like, oh, she must be a distance runner. So yeah, I think don't underestimate yourself, even if you're not off to a good start. You just never know where you'll end up being. And I take that, to heart in everything I do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We have a question. Who are your greatest supporters and do you have any mentors?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have a lot of supporters, so many. Like I said, people are still asking me like, hey, you said you're writing this book 10, 15 years ago. So that keeps me going. But I've had a lot of mentors. I've had one specific mentor. His name is Ross Clavin. He wrote this movie called Tigerland. And when I first moved to New York City, I just stumbled upon meeting him, and he's a ghostwriter as well. So I'm like, can you help me write my story? Because I don't think I'm a good writer. And he read my draft and he's like, Elvira, you have to write the story no matter how long it takes. But I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. Like English is not my strong suit. And he challenged me. He's like, Elvira, you just got to keep going. Just, and he introduced me to another man named Charles Salzberg, who runs a writing workshop in New York City for, I don't know, 30, 40 years. Because when I entered that class, people had been there for 20 something years, still writing their memoir. All have published their books to this day, and I'm the only ones left standing from that group. So yeah, I have a lot of writing mentors who've helped me navigate through this world, not only, through publishing, but also with my personal life. I have, great agent. My agent has been one of my close friends. Me and her have known each other for a little bit. Yeah, I have a lot of supporters, my family, my friends, and I'm very happy because my friends are like my familia. And I think I without them, I don't know where I'd be. Hopefully I'd still be here, but I think having that support is very important in so many ways. And I do talk about that in my book. And I'm hoping that, educators and parents and teachers, coaches are able to read my book, because I think having a support system can really take, a young kid from this barrio and really help them navigate through this crazy world. So yeah, I hope that people read this, and especially adults, and they're able to see how much of an impact they can make on a young adult. But yeah, I do have a lot of mentors, and I'm super happy for them, and I'm hoping that they're excited as I am. I'm super excited. I'm sure they're really excited for me, because they're like, Elvira, is this ever going to happen? Like soon it'll happen. But yeah, it's a long journey, and I'm happy for the support. And yeah, that kind of.
Do you think that being a Latina has helped you or hindered you? I mean, we know that there's a lot of prejudice in the world. I mean, we've seen it, unfortunately, too up close and personal, but Latinos are making headway, so do you consider it a hindrance, blessing?
Growing up in Laredo, it is the least diverse city in the US with 97%, maybe it's 95% Latino. So growing up, I didn't have that sense of, I'm Latina and this and that. And it wasn't until I left Laredo that I did notice that. But I think, as far as publishing goes, from what I know, there has been a lot of issues as far as like not having enough Latina stories out there. I think it's changing now. So I think that might have been the barrier on why I couldn't get an agent for so long. One specific agent did tell me, like, there's no way, there's no market for this book. And so I remember her telling me this, and I was just like, well, we have to create the market. Because there's a lot of in my mind, I was like, oh, this story is only for Latinos, but obviously because I deal with a lot of issues, this book is universal, the book that I wrote. But yeah, I think there might be some barriers as far as getting into publishing before. I'm not sure for now. I think hopefully there isn't that. I mean, I'm sure there are, but as far as the opportunities go, I think I've had a lot of great opportunities using the Latina card, and being bilingual has been helpful for me, especially working in New York City in the Upper West Side. We have a lot of Spanish speaking athletes there. But yeah, I think in some ways there might be some barriers. Especially growing up in the barrio, there's definitely barriers. Growing up there is not easy navigating and getting out of that place. But there's also a lot of opportunities, I think, being Latina now, specifically, probably with all the stuff that happened in the last few years. But to answer your question, I think being Latina has helped me get to where I'm at today. Yes.
Wonderful.
Definitely.
That's what we want to hear.
Yes. And I'm very proud of it. Yes.
Yes. I'm very proud of being a comadre, because we're here for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And like I said, I'm very thankful for discovering your organization, because like I said, I didn't know what I was doing, and I was living in New York, and I hadn't met a community like yours. I believe is it the largest one in the world?
We like to think so.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think so, right?
We have over 10,000 members worldwide.
That's amazing. Yes.
We have them in Hawaii, in Singapore, London, Germany. There are comadres everywhere.
Great. Yes, I'm very happy for that. And yeah, like I said, when I went to the conference in 2017, I learned so much about the publishing, and I felt connected, and knowing that like I'm not the only Latina here that is writing a book or trying to get this out there. So that's been very helpful. And I think there needs to be, more resources like y'all's. And yeah, and I think talking about having these speaker series is important to have, and I'm hoping that the Latinas are able to discover you guys and find you guys, because it's been really helpful. Like that conference really helped me a lot, and I will never forget that. That was amazing. Good. Hopefully you guys have one soon. I don't know, is that happening?
Well, we were trying to do one for next year, but it's COVID just threw, it's still throwing curves. So we're going to leave it to like 24 to 2024 and see if, because we want it to be in person. A virtual writers conference is good, but it's that in-person feeling that you really get inspired, that you really get motivated, that you make those connections. So, we talked about it, but we we put it away for now. But, you know, another writers conference is coming and we are thinking about it. And actually for everyone who's here, and we'll announce it later, Elvira has agreed to teach 3, you know, writing sessions for the Comadres University. So we'll be announcing those later. So we'll see, you know, all you comadres who want to write a book, you know, it's never too late, right? There's not an age limit.
No.
You know, there are people getting published in their 70s and 80s. So for all you writers out there, Elvira is coming.
Yes. Oh, I mean, the older you're this, it was good that it took this long because, you know, I've grown as a person, but also my writing has improved significantly. I don't know what a book would look like if I published it 10 years ago. So it's been great. Thank you.
Good. Well, thank you for being here with us. Now, Eileen is going to close our program.
Thank you so much. This was really exciting because I'm used to being in writers' workshops where everyone's complaining, and here's somebody who really took a proactive, exciting journey. So thank you, Comadre Elvira, and thank you, Comadre Maria Ferrer, for a great interview. We'll be contacting you soon about our September meeting. And thank you everyone for joining us tonight.
Good night, everyone. Thank you, Elvira.
Thank you guys.
And
Thank you.
happy Labor Day.
Yes, thank you. Thank you guys for coming.
Great talk.
It was a
Really
great
great
talk.
talk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Awesome.